In this video, I am going to show you how to use Excel to create a frequency distribution and a frequency histogram for qualitative data. So here I have some data that represents batting averages of 157 MLB players in the 2019 season. And what I want to do is summarize this data into a histogram and a table. So when we're making histograms and tables for quantitative data, we call them frequency distributions. So the easiest way to do this on the modern versions of Excel is to highlight all your data, and then we are going to, I'm going to go back up to the top here, we are going to insert, and over here, see this blue column icon? That gives us our statistical charts, and we are going to insert a histogram. So here's the default histogram from Excel. If you click Chart Design, they have different options you can select. Now if I select this one here, it will put the frequencies, which are the number of data values that fall into each of these categories, where each category is called a class. So each bar on this histogram is labeled with frequencies, which is the number of data values that fall into the classes representing the bar. And the classes are basically intervals of values. The classes for the histogram are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. That means there is no overlap, and every data value has exactly one class to go into. Each class is defined by two numbers. These are called limits. The smaller one is the lower limit, and the bigger one is the upper limit. And we can use those classes that Excel has found for us to create a table. So let me first give this a title. This is our frequency histogram, or I'll just write histogram for the average data. On the horizontal axis, we have, let me click in here, the classes. So I'm going to add an element, a chart element. That's a title. So I can say that here we have the classes. Oops. Okay, and then let's also add a vertical axis title. You know, we're working with frequencies. Right? Okay, so classes, frequencies are on the vertical axis, classes on the horizontal axis. Each class is defined by two numbers, a lower limit and an upper limit. So we could start filling in our frequency distribution table here by typing in first lower limit and the first upper limit. Now notice here we have brackets defining this first class. That means both the lower and upper limit are included in the class. In the second class, notice it starts with 147, which is what the previous class ended with. That is why there is a parenthesis here rather than a bracket. So that means this endpoint is not included in the second class. So we can say the first class consists of all values from 0.0128, notice that's our minimum value here, up through and including 0.147. And then the second class are all values greater than 0.147 up through and including 0.166. The third class are all values greater than 0.166 up through and including 0.185, and so on. Now, I could type these all individually, but to save a little time, I'm going to compute what's called the class interval and use the class interval to finish this. So the class interval is the difference between consecutive lower limits. It also is the difference between consecutive upper limits, but we'll just keep it this way. Now, when you've defined your lower limits the way we have here, the way Excel does it, where all but the first lower limit is not actually included in the interval because the first lower limit is the same as the previous upper limit, the class interval is also the same thing as the difference between the upper and lower limits. But traditionally, we're just going to use the traditional definition, which is difference between consecutive lower limits. So let's go ahead and find out what that interval is. So I'm going to take the first lower limit and subtract the second lower limit, subtract the first lower limit to get 0.019. And then I am going to create a formula by taking a lower limit and adding the class interval. And then I'm going to do function F4. I'm using a PC. That's the shortcut to add $sign so that both the column designations and row designations for this class interval is fixed. So when I copy the formula, that always stays the same. And then I can copy this until I get to 0.337. And that is our last lower limit. And I can do the same thing to get the upper limits. Sorry about that. Let's just type in the cell. Oops. Got to move this so I can get to it. I think it's I. Just type it in. That would be I4. And then function F4. Copy that down. Yes, at 0.356, that's the last upper limit. So now I have the classes in the table, and I can fill in the frequencies here. So 1, 0, 1, 0, 5, 17, 39, 41, 33, 15, 4, and 1. And then we will add these up to confirm that we got the correct frequencies. And there we are, total 157. So we have a frequency histogram, all right, or distribution of a frequency histogram and a frequency table, both for describing frequency distributions for quantitative data. I hope you found this useful. Thank you for watching.